Hello and welcome back to the channel. A little something different today in a new playlist called Stories. I'm going to tell a story, and it is called The Gate on Ashcombe Hill. And it goes, I want to preface this by saying I've never been the kind of person who believes in anything I can't touch. No ghosts, no fate, none of that. I'm telling you that up front because you are going to need to know it so that when I tell you what happened to me on a Tuesday afternoon in October, you understand that I am not exaggerating. I am not the type of person who exaggerates. It started as a good day, one of those rare ones. I'd driven up into the mountains that morning just to clear my head. No real destination, just me, a full tank of gas, and a road that wound higher and higher until the trees thinned out and I could see for miles. The sky was that impossible clear blue you only get a few times a year, scattered with clouds and looked almost painted on, too round and too white to be real. I remember thinking at some point around noon that I should take a picture. I didn't. I wish I had. But early afternoon, I was heading back down, back toward the city, back toward my normal life. My apartment, my job, the routine I'd been living in for years without really noticing it. And somewhere on that descent, I did something I never do. I got off my usual road. There was a turn I'd never taken, a smaller two-lane road curling off to the right, shaded by trees and met overhead like a tunnel. I don't know what made me take it. Boredom, maybe? Or just wanting the drive to last a little longer before real life swallowed me back up. So I turned. The road was quiet, almost too quiet, if I'm honest, though I didn't think much of it at the time. No other cars, no mile markers I recognized. At one point, I passed a gas station with a brand name I'd never seen before. Not a chain I recognized, not even a knockoff of one I did. I remember glancing at it and thinking, hmm, weird, and then just letting it go. The way you let go of 100 small oddities every day without ever stopping to ask why. Then the neighborhood came up on my left. I want to describe it carefully because the details matter. It didn't look like the gated communities you see advertised. The beige stucco, the identical red tile roofs. This was old money, or old-looking money, at least. Stone walls threaded with ivy, trees that had clearly been there for 100 years, not planted last spring by a developer, and at the entrance a gate unlike anything I'd seen outside of a magazine, wrought iron, easily 15 feet tall, carved with patterns so intricate I actually slowed the car down to take a look at them. Vines, birds, a crest of some kind in the center that I couldn't quite make out. I didn't plan to go in. I want to be clear about that. I was just going to take a look, maybe turn around in the little cul-de-sac out front. But as I slowed near the gate, it began to open on its own, smooth, silent, like it had been waiting for me. And I drove in. I still don't have a good explanation for why. Curiosity, I guess, or something quieter than curiosity, a kind of pull I didn't examine too closely at the time. The road inside curved gently, between lawns so green they looked airbrushed, past houses that weren't houses so much as small estates, set back behind hedges and long driveways. My phone rang. I glanced down at the screen, expecting my mom or work, or one of maybe four people who ever actually call me. Instead, it said Charles. Well, I don't know a Charles. I want to say that plainly. I have never in my life known a Charles, but for whatever reason, maybe because I was already a little disoriented by the gate, by the size of the houses, by the strange quiet of the place, I answered. Hey, finally, the voice said, warm, familiar, like we'd talked 100 times before. You almost missed me. I was about to head into a meeting. You get back into town, okay? Hmm. I sat there with the phone against my ear, my car idling in the middle of the road I'd never driven, and I genuinely could not form a sentence. My mouth just kind of hung open. You still there? Charles asked. Yeah? Yes, sorry, bad signal, I said, because it was the only thing that came out. Sorry, who is this again? There was a pause, not a hostile one, more like he thought I was joking. It's Charles, man. You feeling all right? I think you might have the wrong number, I said. And I remember my voice cracking and shaking a little on the wrong because some part of me already knew that wasn't quite it. Wrong numbers don't know your voice. Wrong numbers don't call you man like they have known you for years. Charles laughed. Easy, unbothered. All right. Get some rest, dude. Talk soon, yeah? He hung up before I could say anything else. So I sat there in the car for a long moment, just staring at the phone. My hands, I noticed, weren't even shaking. I think I was too confused to be scared yet. Confusion has a way of numbing you before the fear catches up. I kept driving, mostly because I didn't know what else to do, and because some small, dumb part of my brain had already decided this was probably an elaborate prank. Maybe a wrong number scam, maybe a mix-up with the gate, some kind of automated system that had mistaken my car for a residence. I've replayed that logic in my head 100 times since, and I still don't know how I managed to convince myself it made sense. I think you can talk yourself into almost anything if the alternative is too big to hold. The houses just kept getting bigger, columns, fountains, a driveway, with what looked like an honest-to-God guest house bigger than my actual apartment. I slowed the car to take it in, half in awe, half in this creeping unease. I couldn't name it. That's when I saw the two people waving, a woman and an older woman, standing together in a driveway just up ahead, both of them smiling and waving at my car like they'd been waiting for me. I actually looked over my shoulder, convinced they had to be waving at someone behind me, but there was no one behind me. I slowed down. I didn't stop, not at first. I think some instinct in me wanted to just keep driving, find the way out, pretend I'd never turned down that road. But they were already walking toward the end of the driveway, and something about the way they moved, so natural, so certain, made me pull in. The younger one reached my window first. She was maybe my age, dark hair, pulled back, a smile on her face that was so genuinely happy to see me that it made my stomach twist. "There you are," she said, like I was late. "We were starting to wonder." I got out of the car. I don't fully know why. Maybe because staying inside it, doors locked, suddenly felt more absurd than getting out. "Hi," I said, which is a stupid thing to say to someone who is looking at you like you are the most important person in their world, but it was all I had. She hugged me, full, warm, familiar hug, the kind you give someone you have hugged 1,000 times before. I stood there with my arms half raised, not sure whether to hug her back, landing somewhere in between that probably looked as strange as it felt. Beth, the older woman, said warmly, coming up beside her, "Give the poor man some room. He's probably exhausted." Beth, somehow hearing her name out loud made it worse, not better, like it should have meant something to me and didn't. The older woman, Beth's mother, apparently took my hands in both of hers. Her rings were cold against my knuckles. "Welcome home," she said, beaming at me. "We hope you had a wonderful vacation." I want you to sit with that phrase for a second, the way I had to sit with it standing in that driveway. Welcome home. Like this house, this street, this life was mine. Like I'd been somewhere and came back to it. Well, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just smiled, the kind of smile you give when you have absolutely no idea what's happening, but you don't want to be the one to break whatever spell everyone else seems to be under. We talked for a few minutes, small talk, the drive, the weather. Beth mentioned something about her father being excited to see me tonight, and her mother said they'd see me later. "Dinner at 7, don't be late." You know how he gets. And then, just like that, they turned and walked back up toward the house, waving over their shoulders, leaving me standing alone in the driveway that apparently belonged to my girlfriend's parents, a girlfriend I had never met in my life. I watched them go inside, I watched the door close, and then I just stood there. The air felt different, really very different. I know that sounds, but I need you to understand it wasn't bad. It was almost too good, a bit outer worldly. Anyway, it was clean in a way that didn't smell like anything, like it had been filtered through something before it reached me. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat if you listen for it. I looked at the house in front of me, my apparent house, and for the first time I let myself really consider the word I'd been avoiding. Not prank, not mix up, something else, something I didn't have language for yet. I walked up to the front door like a man walking into deep water, testing each step before I trusted it. I knocked, even though apparently I lived there. No answer. I tried the handle, unlocked. As the door opened, "Hello?" I called into the entryway, my voice sounding small against the high ceilings. "I was told this is supposed to be my house. If this is a prank, it's a really good one. It's really good, man. And I'd love for someone to just tell me now, please. I don't mean any harm. I'm just really, really confused." Nothing. Just the tick of a grandfather clock somewhere deeper inside the house. I stepped in. The foyer alone was bigger than my living room back home. Marble floors, a staircase curling up towards a landing lined with framed photographs. I moved toward my almost I moved toward them almost against my will. The way you can't help looking at a car accident. And there I was, me, at what looked like a lake house, arm around Beth, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. Me again, younger, in a cap and gown I didn't recognize, standing next to people I'd never met. All of them looking at me like I was the reason for the photo. Me and Beth on what was unmistakably a beach somewhere tropical. Her head on my shoulder, a wedding ring, catching the light on her hand. I stood in front of that staircase for what felt like a very, very long time. Every room told the same story. Upstairs, I found a closet full of clothes in my exact size. Some of them styles I liked, some of them things I never would have picked out myself, but that somehow still felt like mine. A shelf of video games, very familiar. Half of them titles I recognized, half of them games I'd never heard of. From studios I didn't know existed, and yet when I picked up a controller and turned on the console, out of some morbid curiosity, my thumbs knew exactly where the buttons were, muscle memory for a life I didn't remember having. I went to the window at one point and looked out, half expecting to see someone watching me from the street, filming this, waiting for the moment I lost it completely so they could post it somewhere. But the street was empty. Nobody was watching. Nobody was in on it. That was almost worse than if they had been. I pulled out my phone with hands that had finally started shaking and opened my contacts. The fear is starting to kick in. Half the names were gone. My best friend's number, gone. My two other closest friends, gone. Like they'd been deleted or like they'd simply never been saved in the first place. In their place were names I'd never seen. Charles, a dad that wasn't my father's name, a contact simply labeled Dr. Hallbrook, no context, no explanation. I opened the internet browser out of pure reflex, the way you do 100 times a day without thinking. I typed a name, a celebrity, someone huge, someone everyone would know. Nothing came up. Not a blank search, not an error, just nothing, like the name had never existed. I tried a social media site next. One I checked probably too many times a day. Back home, to be honest, the browser returned a message I'd never seen before. No such service exists. I sat down on the edge of a bed that was apparently mine in a house that was apparently mine, in a life that had apparently been waiting for me this entire time. And I tried to think of a single explanation that made sense. I couldn't find one. Outside, the light was starting to shift. The late afternoon gold, that means evening isn't far off. Somewhere across town in a house I'd never seen, a family I'd never met was setting a table for dinner, and they were expecting me at 7. I want to tell you, I got back in my car right then. I want to tell you, I turned around, drove straight for the gate, and got out before whatever this was could close in around me completely. But I didn't. I stayed because some part of me, some quiet, terrified, curious part, needed to know how deep this went, needed to know who was waiting at that table and what they'd tell me about the life I was apparently supposed to remember living. At 7 o'clock, I got back in my car and I drove to Beth's parents' house for dinner. I still, to this day, don't know if that was a right choice. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.